So Kat, you're about to go on tour, like almost any day now, really. And I know there's always a sense of anticipation for any artist. And we're on the East Coast, so Brooklyn Bowl March 2nd, Gramercy Theater, New York March 3rd. But I'm just wondering, when you were putting this tour together, what was the goal as far as what you wanted the audience? What, like, if two people went to the show together, what did you want them saying to each other as they were walking out of the venue?
Well, I mean, I think that's an awesome question because we worked so hard on the production of this live show, and for me, it was just so important to do the storytelling justice on stage. I think that the songs tell a story, and I wanted to bring that to life, not just sonically, but also visually. So I teamed up with Linda Strawberry, who's the art director for Smashing Pumpkins and a bunch of other amazing bands, and her and I, we share a lot of the same aesthetic, like passions. We love finding the beauty in the macabre and the darkness, and so we actually filmed these really beautiful vignettes for each song that are going to be projected onto these giant LED panels, and we have a contortionist in our band, Bryn, who's an amazing athlete, and we've actually written a lot of the interludes and the different different sound vignettes for her to be able to dance to and move her body to. And I think that's one of my favorite things about live shows is that when you go and see somebody play and there's that showmanship, because there's nothing worse than like loving a band and then going to see them play and they're just like standing at the mic stand for hours. It's like you might as well just have stayed at home and listened to the record. So yeah, we definitely want to create that experience for our fans.
The most recent piece of music you released was on February 11th. You released the cover of Selena's Fotos y Recuerdos, if I'm pronouncing it right. And
good job.
Okay, thanks. Because I know you're a native Spanish speaker.
Yeah.
Which is, I think, part of the reason you were drawn to this and Selena, right? You have a connection.
Yeah. I mean, I've been a huge fan of Selena's music for a majority of my life. Like her crossover album was kind of a crucial cornerstone of my childhood upbringing because we had just moved to America and we didn't speak English, so that was our introduction into English, and it was a bilingual album, and so she was on pretty heavy rotation at our house growing up, and years later I was able to tattoo a portrait of her on her brother. This was after she passed away, and so I've always just admired her as a musician, but also her personality. She just seemed so kind and gracious and wonderful, and so I'm hoping that we did her song justice. I thought that song was interesting, and I wanted to cover it and make it more of a melancholy feel, because if you actually read the lyrics and what they mean, although the song sounds quite happy, the original, the lyrics are about basically a love that's been lost, and all that you have left are photos and memories. And so that's what Fotos y Recuerdos is. But so I was like, let's make the sounds match the lyrics, and that was really fun for us to do as a band, and give it that synthwave approach. So her brother did message me and was quite excited about it, so that's good news.
Oh, that's great.
Yeah.
You've spoken quite a bit about what inspired the lyrics on the album. In Unrequited Love years ago, person sent an album to you, you responded with an album. I didn't want to make you rehash all of that. I was kind of interested in the musical side of the album and how you composed these songs. I know you're a piano player by training, but did these songs start out on piano?
Yeah, a majority of them, with the exception of Pretending, was written on guitar. But an Exorcism was written on guitar actually, but all the rest is, I'm not a very good guitar player at all. I can only just get by on like chords, but on power chords. But as far as piano, it's just easier for me to navigate and find melodies and find chord progressions that I like. So everything for the most part starts on piano for me, and then afterwards, I get together with my band and we work and tweak out on all the sound design, and that's when all the analog synthesizers, we have like a synth room here at the house, and it's all pink, and there's just about 10 different synthesizers that we mess around with, and that part is a little more tedious, but I think it's worth it. You know, because although we are inspired by a lot of these like post-punk bands, like we don't want to sound, we want to create our own sound, you know, and so I think that takes effort in designing those sounds versus just playing presets or, you know, like, oh, that's the iconic Duran Duran synth. It's like, I don't want that. I don't want when people listen to the music to think of that, you know?
Yeah. A few artists I thought of when listening to the album, and I'm always curious to see if what I'm hearing has anything to do with your influences. But I
Yeah.
heard a little bit of Karen O and also Emily Haynes from Metric, and I'm wondering if I'm just hearing things that aren't there, or
That's funny. One of Sammy's favorite bands is Metric. So, I mean, I
Hmm.
can see some of that in there. But I mean, I love Johnette Napolitano's voice, like from Concrete Blonde, and I love her poetry and lyrics. I think she's amazing. You know, like I love The Cure and Depeche Mode and Susie and the Banshees and things like that. But it's not really, you know, I wouldn't say that we sound like them,
Yeah, I
really.
think it's hard to pinpoint, and that that's a good compliment where it's not
Yeah, I think so.
obviously linearly coming from a certain
Yeah,
place, you know.
yeah.
Uh, so initially you wrote it as a rock album, and then you released it as the word that's being used a lot for the genre is dark wave, but it's you could hear the rock in there in its
Yeah.
art. But what made you decide to retool it?
Well, you know what had happened is I had flown out to London to produce it with Adam Noble, and he's an amazing producer. And I was introduced to him because he had produced one of my favorite Placebo records, Loud Like Love. And I just loved that, you know, he was meshing certain, I guess, genres, you know, into like incorporating some of like the electronic synthesizer sounds into some of the like rock stuff. And but I wouldn't necessarily call ourselves rock either. I just think, you know, we had some guitar, like Cure-ish guitars, and then, you know, Dave Grohl had played drums on a few tracks, like all the live drums, but a lot of it was still programmed drums. And, you know, I think we used like a Juno all over that thing. So there was still some synthesizer sounds, but we do plan on releasing a few of those mixes. I think like fans would be so stoked on hearing those. But what happened is that once the lockdown happened, I had already formed my band. And so we basically said, hey, let's get together and start writing just for fun, just to keep continuously being creative during the lockdown, which for somebody who struggles with like, you know, depression and things like that, you know, it's important to stay productive and creative. And so they all moved in with their cats and their synthesizers, and we just started messing around and creating sounds. And so we wrote an interlude for Bryn to dance to on stage. And we just loved how it came together. It was so great working together. And I thought, hey, you know, we've got time. I don't think this thing's going to be over overnight. So why don't we just start remixing the album as a band? And that's the final outcome that you hear now. And I'm so proud of it because I do have an emotional attachment to my bandmates. And I really feel like they breathed a different type of life into what we were doing. And, you know, wouldn't be here without them.
Yeah. It also probably makes. Did you already know this was the lineup you were going to tour with, or after you did the album, you said these are the people I want on?
No, I knew these were who we were going to tour with. You know, I don't. I see ourselves as a band. You know, they're not like hired guns or anything. Like we're creative together. We do. You know, we produce this show together. You know, I don't really. I mean, I'm driving the ship, but it's definitely a team effort.
Yeah, and you mentioned Dave Grohl. I wanted to ask, a little bit about what some of the guests brought on here, because I don't know if people realize there's some real A-listers on here. Dave Grohl, Dave from TV on the Radio, Peter Murphy from Bauhaus. What in particular did each of those guys bring?
Yeah, Dave Siddick from TV on the Radio did some remixes for us, but I was working with him for a while on production of some songs. But Dave Grohl played drums on 3 or 4 songs. I know we're releasing all of them. So one of them was Enough, and Fear You, and I believe Exorcism. And he actually played drums on another demo that was never released that I think I'll end up releasing this next year. But yeah, and then I obviously did that duet with Peter Murphy, who I'm a huge fan of. I love Bauhaus, and At the time when I was working on this album, I was neighbors with Danny Lohner from Nine Inch Nails, and he was a dear friend, and he was the one that introduced me to Peter and this song. So that's one of the only songs that I didn't write on the album because Peter was responsible for those lyrics, and which I was fine by me. I'm such a huge fan of him. Just to be in the same sentence was such an honor. And yeah, and I had like some guest vocals like Lady Hawk, who I'm a huge fan of as well. And yeah, so I think music is fun for me in that sense because I have a lot of amazingly talented artist friends that I can team up with and collaborate and make something that normally would never come to life. Like I don't think Dave Grohl ever planned on playing on this kind of music, but he's so talented that he can really lend himself to whatever he's playing, and I think that's really great.
What was the reaction like when you initially took the show on the road? I know you had some West Coast dates not too long ago.
Yeah, it was awesome. I mean, oh my God, it was so cool to be able to sing these songs live. I mean, that's what they were, they were written in that sense, like to be able to play live. And bonding with my bandmates on stage is always like, I mean, I'm a sentimental person, so that stuff is like pretty important to me. But seeing people sing along to the songs, man, that really just got to me, because it's like I've spent my whole life being a fan of music, and to be able to connect with people on that like level is, I don't know, it's pretty damn amazing. I mean, I feel like I've tattooed so many lyrics over my life as a tattooer, and I've been to so many different shows, and I collect so many metal shirts and different concert shirts and stuff, and to be able to be on the other side is exciting. It's like, oh, this is, I think my biggest regret in life is that I didn't do this sooner.
I know the American public seems to be very skeptical when an artist steps into a different medium, and
as they should be. I think there's far too many terrible examples, especially like actors or celebrities that view putting out an album as a product, and they're like, oh, I'll just slap my name on it, somebody will write it, somebody will auto-tune it, and here it goes, and I'm not going to tour because I don't really actually give a fuck about music. And it's like, that's not, in my case, that's not what's happening. I never put my name on anything that I don't 100% I'm involved in. And these songs came from my heart, and I did the homework. When I decided to write this album, I went and I took voice lessons for 2 years, and I didn't flatter myself in thinking that I was going to be well equipped. So I teamed up with a lot of my talented friends, and Linda Perry helped me write a lot of music, because I've been playing classical music all my life, so I'm used to very structured, Bach, Beethoven, Mozart, that kind of thing. And so she had to like break me of that and be able to be okay with being imperfect, which I think is what makes music good.
So your cat's making an appearance.
Yeah, this is Poe. Come here, baby girl. She's like, hey.
A Sphinx cat?
Yeah, hairless cats. We have 3 of them. So yeah, I mean, I think I don't blame people when they say, like, when they are skeptical, but then I'm always very excited to just like listen to the music and let the work speak for itself. It might not be the type of music you like, but there's that human fingerprint, which I love, and that's why, even though it's electronic driven, all those instruments we played, and that's why I love analog synthesizers, because you can hear the imperfections and you can feel that human fingerprint.
Could you think of an example of someone that is, multi-hyphenate person that's worked in various media, I guess, that you do think they did a good job when they maybe stepped into music from, let's say, acting or something?
Yeah, I mean, I don't know if I have like a modern day example, but like I've always looked at like Salvador Dali as like a big influence for me, in the sense that, like, even though he's known mainly for his paintings, like not everybody knows this, but he did so much. He had a cookbook, he designed architecture, furniture, jewelry. I think at one point he had his own perfume line, books on poetry and philosophy. And it's like that man wasn't a one-trick chump. And I think that a lot of people are conditioned to believe that you have to stay in your lane. And that's what a sad view on the world. Like, I think, as somebody who's creative, like, we don't live off of one thing alone. Like, you may know me for tattooing, but I'm actually a pretty good drawer as well. I like graphite, and that's where I began in my art career. And obviously with music, I was classically trained as a pianist since I was 5. And so I think that's the coolest thing, is to be able to have all these different outlets and not be pigeonholed into one thing. But, obviously the problem is people don't carve out the time to, like, really try and master things or get good at it. They just want to, I don't know, release a product, I guess. And that's just never been my MO with anything I've created. So yeah, I wish there was more examples that I could think of off the top of my head of people. Usually it's the other way around. It's like musicians want to be painters, or
Right.
or want to become some writers or whatever. And I think that just makes sense to me, because if you're a visual person, or if you are responding to lyrically, you're automatically fascinated by writing and literature. So it's like, it would make sense that you could do that. But I don't know, maybe people are just jealous.
It could be it too. Like, this person's really good at one thing, you know, who gives them the right to be good at 2 or 3, Um, uh, what are you working on new material?
Yeah, we're actually in the middle of writing album number 2 right now. So the plan is to, we start this tour on the February 28th, is in Pittsburgh, and then we'll be on the US tour for a month, or the month of March. And then we have 3 weeks off before we head to Europe. And so during those 3 weeks, we'll probably finalize the the songs, and then go into production once we get back from Europe.
Um,
And then we get to tour all over again.
so how would you kind of describe the way that material is
For me?
sounding so far?
Yeah, I'm really pushing myself on this album to become more aggressive. I think I'm not trying to write a metal album by any means, but I think vocally I want to really push myself. And then I think too, this Love Made Me Do It, this album was written specifically about one person. And it was like I told you before, is like the unrequited love situation. And that was like a moment in time. And I'm not there anymore. So I have other things that I want to sing about. And so I really would like to get more aggressive with it, and just push ourselves sonically. I'm not interested in changing our style per se, but I do want to push us to evolve and be a little bit louder. So yeah.
What are your summer plans looking like? Tours, festivals, anything in the works?
Well, we'll be back in June after Europe, and I believe it really depends on the state of things. Like I really, to me, it's important to play Mexico. That's my motherland. It's where I was born. And then if you're going to go to Mexico, you got to go to South America as well. So I think ideally it would be great to venture down there before going on tour again for the US for the new album. But we'll see what happens, kind of at the mercy of everyone.
Yeah. As a fellow metal fan, I was just wondering, what are some of your favorite metal acts?
Well, I like a lot of black metal, but I love obviously the classics. I love Slayer, Metallica, all that stuff. And to me, Metallica actually holds like a pretty big place in my heart, because like, Ride the Lightning was what was my gateway drug into metal, from like listening to punk rock music. And I think that because I had such a background in classical music, I just had so much more admiration for metal, more so than punk rock, because punk rock was all about feeling and the sentiment, but there was no skill. I mean, I don't care who you are. There just really wasn't. It's just power chords and yelling. Whereas like Metallica was like, oh wow, those scales are. This is some Beethoven shit, and the type of singing was like, borderline operatic. And to me, it was like, okay, this takes skill, and that I can really aspire, to not to be, but you want to have heroes and you want to admire people. And as much as I love the Germs, I don't, aspire to be anything like that. And so I think that, I guess metal just plays like a really big part in my musical shaping in that sense. And then obviously once I graduated, it's like more the post-punk stuff. That's where my heart really sat, because it was the lyrics. I'm a hopeless romantic. I love poetry, and I love lyrics that you'd get tattooed, and bands like The Cure. I mean, you can't really there's nothing better.
Yeah. Are there any particular concerts you saw either recently or when you were even a little kid that, you know, still stick with you? Maybe you even flash back thinking about them today, how that made you felt to
Yeah.
be at those shows.
Yeah, I mean, it's not gonna be. I mean, like Slayer to me was one of the best bands to see play live. I mean, I've seen them play very a good amount of times, and is something about the energy of, you know, that's it's a room full of people that are feeling the same thing. And I mean, I'm a huge Slayer fan, so I guess it might be lost on somebody else, but for me, I feel like those shows were always like you walk away just like mind blown. But you know, at the
Uh,
same time, in the other concerts that have been really moving to me is like I remember seeing Sigur Rós play at the Dorothy Chandler for
oh,
the year, and to me it was like that was something that was very inspiring because I knew that they were behind all the filming of the projections that were behind, and you know, obviously the music was just so moving. And I remember, I mean, this is obviously before I was sober, and I thought, oh, I should get some ecstasy or some drugs, you know, and it'll be great. And I wasn't able to, you know, like I for some reason wasn't able to get any drugs, and I sat down and. uh I remember the first song I was gripping the chair so hard that I was like, "Oh, you don't need drugs. This is drugs," you know. And that was like, I mean, it was just so intense and beautiful, and it was like a sea of musicians, like in awe, you know, of like any band that you ever admired was there, just admiring them. And yeah, there's just true talent, like where it just transcends language, you know.
right. Yeah. Kat, that's really all the questions I had. Is there
Oh
anything
yeah,
else you
sorry,
want?
I talk a lot, so
No, don't be sorry. That's
yeah,
definitely better than pulling teeth.
yeah.
Is there anything else you wanted to mention that we didn't touch on about the record or the tour?
I'm just excited to go on the road and play live for everybody. You know, I think that's something that, like, to me, that like I was mentioning before, the connection between me and my fans, and you know, I love the meet and greets and being able to hug everybody and take photos. And so, you know, so hopefully people come out and hang out with us. I'm really excited about it.
All right. Well, thanks again. It was great talking
Yeah.
to you.
Oh, thanks for the amazing questions.
Oh, you're welcome. Thank you.
All right.
All right.
Bye.
Bye.